I think you can talk to the majority of the developers and you'll get the same answer, which is having to set up a huge amount of dependencies to get a small application running is always a hassle. I've found this in multiple applications, whether it's a small Flask API or a WordPress website, or I don't have any other examples really, but it's always a schlep to kind of get your database going. Perhaps you got your Redis cache going, and then you've got to set up your website as well, and you've got to connect all of it together. Essentially, that's not a problem. This is obviously how we build modern systems. But what if it's just a small proof of concept you're trying to build? What if it's a website you're trying to prototype? It gets annoying to spin up a whole SQL database just to connect WordPress to it. And even once you get to production, you're going to have to do that again. You're going to have to set up MySQL. You're going to have to install Apache or Nginx. You're going to have to install WordPress, run it through Apache or Nginx, and then connect your database to it. It's not a complicated system, but it's still a lot for a website that's probably going to get 1 or 2 page views a day. A couple of months ago, I did some exploring and I actually found that WordPress has an SQLite plugin, which allows you to run a WordPress website with SQLite. And I can instantly hear a huge amount of people on the internet saying, hold on, you want to run a production website with SQLite? And the answer is yes. A lot of these websites are not high traffic. They're not high volume in any way, shape, or form. And SQLite is an extremely well-tested and well-used database. I gave it a shot and I thought to myself, I'll build a Docker container. I'll try and make it as lightweight as possible. It needs to install WordPress, install the SQLite plugin, and let's have a look. Let's see if it'll actually produce a usable product. It's been a great experience. I set up a website, which you can see in front of you, which is not a great website. It's just a small website, but it has a whole bunch of plugins attached to it. It's got a whole bunch of setup already initialized within it that is running inside of a Docker container that has WordPress and the SQLite plugin running. This is not connected to any MySQL database. It is a single container connected to a traffic instance, which is giving us the HTTPS access from the virtual private server, and that's it. And if you think about that conceptually, that gives us a great amount of freedom to just spin up containers and run new WordPress websites. We don't have to have another dependency being the database. You can just have 6 or 7 different containers running the WordPress SQLite codebase. And I know there's a huge amount of bias towards SQLite, as I spoke about earlier, but there are some great advantages to how this runs. It also uses SQLite's write-ahead logger. This ensures that the data's integrity is remained safe. So if for some instance your server loses power, the data is persisted in a log so that once the server obviously gains power again, the data will be recovered into the database. That is your write-ahead logging. I think it's logging. Anyway, I really found this an interesting proof of concept, and the only reason I'm making a video about it is because I literally set it up 7 months ago on the small website exotics.co.za and I left it. And I get emails from that website all the time saying that it's updated to the latest version of WordPress, that the plugins are updating. It's literally running itself on a SQLite database. And it's doing what I wanted it to do, but what I wasn't sure it could do, which is actually be a production website or production-esque. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of content on it, right? But it's running smoothly with SQLite. And I think that's really just a huge benefit for developers who want to quickly get a website up and running, or even just want to get a website running locally on their machine. Because you constantly, I find as a developer, I constantly don't want to be bombarded with setup if I have an idea. If I could go from idea to output instantly, I would be happier rather than set up, work on the idea, and then get the output, because you lose a lot of momentum in the setup. I'd like to give you a little demo of how this actually runs. So I've got a terminal here, I've got Docker running on my machine, and we're going to clone that repo that I created, which I will leave a link for in the comments if you would like to try it out yourself. So let's go into it. It's called WordPress something or other, WordPress SQLite Docker image. There we go. Once I've cloned the repo, all I have to do is Docker compose up. That's now obviously going to set up it's an Alpine Linux image, which has got PHP and a web server installed. It's now gone and downloaded the latest version of WordPress. It's now going to download the latest version of the plugin and install the plugin, which, as I've spoken, it's just done that. So if we jump over to our browser, I'm going to go to localhost 8081, which is defined in the Docker Compose. So if I open up a new tab here and we just have a look at the Docker Compose, you can see the ports are binded. 8081 is binded to the internal AD port, and your WordPress website sits in a ./WordPress directory. We'll have a look at that just now. But if I go and refresh this page, there we are. You can successfully run a local WordPress instance on your machine using SQLite. Again, not a miracle, but we went from, oh, I have a WordPress idea, let me spin up a WordPress instance, and we did it within a couple of seconds. We cloned the repo, we did Docker Compose up, and all of a sudden we've got WordPress looking at us, which really, again, cuts out that huge amount of idea, setup, output. Here we are at the root of the directory that we cloned. So if I go into the WordPress directory and I go into wp-content, there should be a file in here called database. There we go. And if we go into that, you will see index.php, but if you do ls-la, you will see a .ht SQLite, and there is our SQLite database. So through the magic of editing, I've navigated to our directory, and if I select that SQLite database, we should be able to open it up in dbeaver. And it looks like we are successful. Once dbeaver downloads the driver to open SQLite databases, yeah, and we can see it's pretty dang empty. It's got next to nothing in it. So if we do this initialization quickly, just call it my site, username admin, password sure, copy that in case we want to use it later, email, we can use that, and the site's not running, so that the website can submit the form. There we go. Okay, cool. And we don't need to save that, but if we go back to dbeaver now and we refresh this, I think refresh, there we go. There we go. After a refresh, we can see after we initialize the WordPress instance, we get all the usual tables that we expect to see. Again, like I said in the earlier part of this video, this is a great way to run WordPress in a dev environment. I also believe it's a great way to run most WordPress websites in production. Most WordPress websites are not multiple tenancy. When you have a WordPress website that's multiple tenancy, you obviously have a service for the database, you'll probably have caching with Redis, and then you'll have a load balancer with multiple instances in the middle running the WordPress code that connect to the database and the Redis instance. That really, I think, is the exception to the rule when it comes to WordPress, because WordPress websites are generally smaller websites made for small entrepreneurs, SMEs, and mom and pop shops. I would really like to see more of this being done. If you try it out, please let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It is my first video on this channel and I do hope to make more. Other than that, stay safe, keep on hacking, and I'll see you around.